Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. The preview and prediction video for the ATP Tour Finals, and it's for Daniil Medvedev versus Alexander Zverev, the two winners of their first games. So whoever wins this one will most likely secure their place to the semi-finals. And it's two players who have won the ATP Tour Finals before as well, in Medvedev and Zverev. The head-to-head is 10-7 in favor of the Russian and 4-3 in favor of Medvedev as well. They've actually played each other before at the ATP Tour Finals in the O2 or at the O2 in London, and the head-to-head for that is 1-1. They actually played in the same edition, the 2021 version. Medvedev beat Zverev in 3 very tight sets, including 2 tiebreakers that he won against the German in the round-robin stage, and then in the final, Zverev beat him in straight sets. So interested to see how this one plays out. I think it's going to be very, very tight. Both players played genuinely incredible in terms of their level against their respective opponents. Medvedev against Rublev, who won in straight sets. Zverev against Alcaraz, a tight 3-setter, but his level was great. 20, I think it was 20 or 35 actually, sorry, winners to 6 unforced errors, something along those lines, which is just ridiculously good. For Medvedev, he was at 24 winners to 6 unforced errors, so both players playing incredibly from the back of the court, limiting the errors, making use and really utilizing the faster hard courts here in Turin, which are definitely rapid. And both players have extremely good serves. And I would actually argue that Zverev's serve is slightly better, but we'll get into that in a bit more detail. But on the indoor hard court, both players really pop when it comes to their serving because they're comfortable and assured that they know that they can trust their toss and there's going to be no win involved, no sign, etc. No external factors, and it's ideal serving conditions, and both players are able to win 3 points due to their big serves as well. On top of that, Zverev was really comfortable hitting through the court, and we didn't see a lot of loopy ground strokes from him against Alcaraz. And similarly, I think for Medvedev even, he also will look very comfortable against Rublev, especially on the forehand side, which is a side that can occasionally break down at times. He was actually dictating all of points against Rublev on that forehand side, whereas in the past, last year, for example, when he played Rublev, he really struggled in the forehand to forehand exchanges and ended up losing that match in 3 sets. This time, it was a different story. Similarly, Zverev, who struggled with Alcaraz in the past, the head-to-head is 4-3 in favor of Alcaraz. He leveled things up, excuse me, by being more, I would say, proactive, especially with his ground strokes, occasionally on the forehand side, especially as well. He can go very loopy cross court, very safe, a lot of spin, trying to drag out the opponent. And against Alcaraz, he was hitting a bit flatter with still a lot of spin, but through the court, a lot more purchase through it, and also was going line a lot more as well. So trying to dictate in the rallies when he could. And that's really intriguing to see from Zverev. It just shows that he's playing a really high level. So this should be a very high level match. I imagine it's probably going to go to something like 3 sets. So let's break down, first of all, the head-to-head quickly. I've touched upon it anyway. Then we'll talk about it more tactically and technically. I think there's a lot to kind of really unpack there. And then ultimately I'll give you guys my predictions. So before we do actually as well, I forgot to mention, remember that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do leave a rating review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Okay, so let's then get into this. So the last 2 matches they played have been on outdoor hard court. Medvedev won in straight sets, as you can see on screen, in Beijing, which was pretty recent in October. And in August, Zverev beat Medvedev in 3 sets. So before that, there were some matches on clay in 2023, and also a couple of matches on hard court. You can see here in Wales, Medvedev won in Dubai, I think it was. Medvedev also won there. And then you go back to, well, actually, Dubai was actually in 2022, and the 2021 performances at the ATP Finals, the ones that I mentioned, one apiece there. So really, there's not a whole lot to go upon because even though, yes, they played on hard court this year, they haven't played on indoor hard court. It is a different ball game. I think both players are playing better on the indoor hard courts. I would argue that, in my opinion, I think both players actually are better or at their best on a fast indoor hard court. I think Zverev definitely. Medvedev, I don't think the indoor aspect really matters as much. And you could actually argue maybe outdoor hard courts is actually his best, outdoor fast hard courts anyway, is his best surface. Either way, though, I think it's going to be a really high level match. And yeah, the head-to-head is 10-7, as I mentioned, to Medvedev. So let's talk about it from a tactical point of view, because I think the head-to-head is the head-to-head. We've seen this this match quite a few times, 17 times in total. And really, I think it's going to come down more to the level that they're showing at the moment and what might unfold. So these are two players, by the way, who I think I don't think you need to argue. I think it's pretty safe to say have better backhands than forehands. Their backhands are more reliable. The quality on that side is just very very high, and I would say they've got top five backhands on tour. I would say Medvedev and Zverev. The forehands are not the same. They're not top five by any stretch, and even though the forehands have been firing nicely in their first matches, it's still something that could potentially rear its head. And especially if we get into long drawn out rallies between the two, we could see some more laboured rallies despite it being a quicker, a quicker hard court indoors. Now, the person who's really going to have to up the ante, I think, is going to be Zverev, and he's going to have to try and rush Medvedev as much as possible, and that does mean being proactive with his ground strokes and being a little bit braver, exactly like he was against Alcaraz. And Alcaraz has the same speed. You could argue if it is even potentially quicker than Medvedev, but Medvedev's defensive capabilities are definitely better than Alcaraz's. However, what Zverev did really well against Alcaraz was transitioning well. I thought his net play was very good as well against Alcaraz. He utilized the net well. At times in the past, I think he's made a meal of it at the net. Sometimes he seems to be naturally quite good at the net, but he'd maybe overthink it or not execute it in the correct way. Whereas against Alcaraz, I thought he was pretty good, to be honest, throughout, and there wasn't a lot of criticism like a levy against him when it came to his net game. Similarly, Medvedev, when he sparingly came to the net against Rublev, was also very good. I think he won 8 out of 9 net points, and there are a couple of points where I watched and I was thinking, look, his volleying is improved, and in fairness to Medvedev, he has definitely been improving his game, no doubt. Definitely been improving it. So that's a real positive and kind of thumbs up to him. Where this match is going to be won or lost, well, both players served extremely well, as I mentioned before. They were in double digits in terms of ace counts, and Zverev was actually serving at a high percentage of first serves in. Medvedev not as much, by the way, at 50 or so percent. There's a few things on the serve return dynamics I think we need to touch upon. Now, what Alcaraz did against Zverev, which was definitely a good tactic, and I think everyone does do it anyway, and Medvedev will do it, especially on these courts. He'll hit that slice serve from the deuce side, out wide. He'll drag out Zverev. It'll be awkward for Zverev. He's a tall man. You have to get down low on the forehand side. It's an awkward return for him. I imagine Medvedev's going to win quite a few points going into the forehand return of Zverev, and he likes that slice serve that kind of swings away from the right hander on both the deuce and ad side. Going into that forehand. So Zverev's going to have to be solid, and he's going to have to trust his technique on that, and also be, I think, kind of almost maxing out his forehand return, which is still surprisingly very iffy, which is, it's a massive surprise in honesty, because it shouldn't really be like that. That shouldn't be the case. He should be able, in my opinion anyway, to return better than he's doing on that forehand side, considering that so many players target that forehand. It's crazy to think that he's still not able to execute that well enough. It's just mad. So I mean that's just crazy. That's just absolutely crazy to think about, in my opinion anyway. So we'll see how he gets on anyway. But I think in terms of the serve return dynamic, I personally would say that for Zverev, that forehand return is really important, right? For Medvedev, he's got a fantastic backhand. Medvedev is going to make a lot of returns. We know that. So the question is going to be, can Alexander Zverev really take advantage of that deep return position that Medvedev is definitely going to adopt against Zverev, who's got a massive serve? Is he going to come forward and serve and volley, or at least try and hit a serve +1 and then transition forward then? And if he does do that, is he going to be able to approach the net effectively so that he gives himself an easy enough volley, or at least, at least give himself a volley where he's able to be still on the front foot anyway. It shouldn't be a defensive volley or one where he's scrambling. So he did that very well against Alcaraz. He's going to have to try and utilize the same type of tactic against Medvedev, and he should have some success if he's able to hit his spots on serve and then really make sure that he's either coming behind it effectively, transitioning nicely, or coming in behind that +1 shot. So that's going to be really key for Zverev, I think. And that's definitely something that he can exploit. We always know that Medvedev has that about him. What Medvedev, though, does do really well and did really well against Alcaraz at the US Open is making sure that he then varied his types of returns, and he wasn't predictable there. Now, Zverev's got a bigger serve, so he should be able to nullify that a bit more than, say, someone like Alcaraz. But we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. The backhand-to-backhand rallies always intrigue me in this exchange because I think they're pretty even in terms of shot tolerance and who's going to blink first. And I think general shot tolerance is definitely, in my opinion, it's definitely more Medvedev who has the better shot tolerance. But generally speaking, on the backhand side anyway, I think it's hard to argue that. I think it's definitely hard to argue that Zverev has more shot tolerance on the backhand side or forehand side. I think it's pretty fair to say that Medvedev is definitely, in my opinion anyway, he definitely has the better shot tolerance. That's how I see it anyway. The question is going to be for someone like Zverev, can he make sure that he shortens the points when he's able to? It doesn't mean being incredibly aggressive. It just means being proactive in the points, because the longer the rallies go on, the more chance you give to someone like Medvedev to come out on top, because he just is so good at defending and making you play that extra ball. And we've seen in prior contests between the two, someone like Zverev will break down eventually if you continue to frustrate him and make him play an extra ball or two or three. So Zverev needs to be clever. These faster hard courts should mean that he's able to impose his will a bit more, and he is definitely more attack-minded and inclined than Medvedev, especially when he's comfortable in terms of how he's hitting the ball, and he was against Alcaraz. And if we see that Zverev against Medvedev, we should get an extremely good match, in my opinion anyway. The forehand to forehand is interesting because Medvedev, as we know, hits it very flat. It looked pretty good, I thought, against Rublev, and similarly so did Zverev. So if they both hold up, it's going to be an intriguing cat and mouse at the back of the court. And then it's just going to be, well, who blinks first, who's able to wrestle momentum in the rallies. And then, for Zverev, it might mean coming forward as well. The drop shot, neither player really plays it a lot. I think Medvedev we've seen play a little bit, and he might do so if he's able to push Zverev back and dictate with a forehand, which we saw against Rublev. Then that might be a factor. But he's going to make a lot of returns when he can anyway. Zverev is able to limit the amount of returns he makes generally, and also at least limit the potency of the Medvedev return. Then he'll have a lot more success. And I think for Medvedev, as I said, he will target that forehand return. He will occasionally go into the backhand side, but Zverev needs to make sure that he's asking questions and not giving Medvedev anything easy, because the issue is, if you give Medvedev 3 points, you're in trouble, because he doesn't tend to give you many 3 points, and then it becomes a real physical battle, which more often than not he comes out on top on. In terms of a prediction, I'm actually going to go with Zverev. I was very impressed with his level against Alcaraz. I'm going to go for Zverev in 3 sets. I think it's going to be really, really tight, and I think it could definitely go either way. I genuinely think this is a 50-50, but I'm going to go with Alexander Zverev to come out on top and book his place in the semifinals. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you very much, guys. Stay safe for a while, and we'll see you in the next video.